Welcome to Chicago. We're here at Aquashella. I almost forgot where we were. That's terrible. Aquashella 2022. I've been saying it all day. I don't know. But we are here with Kelly Foreman. You can find her. She is a co-host on the Stephen P. 2003. Oh, I got the numbers right also. Check out them. She is an amazing scaper. She had a tank. Was this your first major event?
Yeah, this was my first major event. I'm an at-home aquascaper. I'm a home aquarist. Most of the things I do are things that you could do in your own home.
Well, that's awesome.
Not a professional.
Oh, but it looked professional, so she did good. She made us proud. And then this is Shelby from Garden of Eater.
You said it right before.
I did. I don't know. I go brain dead once we go live. But thank you, girls, for coming up. And both of these girls, or ladies, I shouldn't be saying girls. I apologize. Are amazing scapers, and they are going to teach you guys some of their tricks that they know. Probably not all of them, but they're going to help you guys become much better at scaping.
Well, thanks for having us, Ed, and thanks for everyone who looked at our tanks online for the voting. It's really gratifying that you guys all really liked our work. So thank you.
Exciting. Yes, thank you for everyone that voted for all of us. I know it's a lot of our YouTubers, so thank you so much.
Yeah.
So let's get started. A lot of the tips. One thing I would say you want to start off with is making sure that you start and you're not always great. So don't get down on yourself when you're not great. I've been doing aquascaping for many years, and no matter what, I lose contests, I don't do the right placement, and it could be judges, it could be other things. So don't get discouraged when you don't win or you don't like the tank. You can always start over.
Yeah.
So it's really easy. You really want to start. You could put a layer of substrate down. Any beginner wants to do that just because moving rocks, you're not used to making sure that you don't scratch the glass. So it is good to protect the glass. You always want to start with your hardscape selection. Plants will come last. So you start with what you want to do, whether you want to do a nature style scape. You can do diorama scapes, which is more rocks involved, where you do mainly rock, and you can do some woodwork with it as well. And then there's a couple different other styles where you could do just only plants. That's like a Brazilian style and the
Iwagumi.
Yeah, exactly. It's like one rock, plants.
Yeah.
So it's really, really interesting. There's a lot of rules to aquascaping, but if you want to do it just as a hobby, you don't have to follow the rules. Do something that you enjoy. So it could be something that looks a little ridiculous or fun, but enjoy it. So I would say one of the first things you start with is your rocks. If you want to do a rock, and you want to start with your larger rocks to make that centerpiece and then build around it, what would you suggest?
Yeah, so I guess my number one tip for people who are beginners to aquascaping is first learn to grow plants. Learn how to take care of them, learn how to fight algae, learn how to trim them. Just learn how to use CO2 if you've never used CO2 before, if that's what you want to do, because that's what's going to set you up for success. It's also going to teach you what plants are appropriate in what place in the scape. So you'll learn that you shouldn't grow, for instance, like Hygrophila corymbosa cherry leaf in the front of your tank, because it's going to take it over. You'll learn that you shouldn't grow a big Amazon sword in a 10-gallon tank because it's going to get huge. So that's the first thing I would suggest, is just work on your skills at growing plants, work on fighting algae. If you're new to keeping fish, learn how to keep fish, learn what fish are appropriate for an aquascape, learn how to take care of them, learn how to take care of your shrimp. Buy some shrimp from Shelby because she sells beautiful shrimp and you can get good stuff that will set you up for success. But work on that first. You're not going to be Takashi Amano or George Farmer to start. No,
it takes time. I'm pretty sure they took time. There are some people that are naturally talented.
There are.
And do really well. Grant. But you know, you got to start somewhere. But don't be
Yeah.
scared of the
Don't be
CO2.
scared. No, don't be scared.
Because
of
I
it.
do mostly low light, no CO2, and I have red plants. You got to just know your water and know how to grow those specific plants. So she is right, correct, 100%. Make sure you know what plants you're buying. So don't go to the store and buy the pretty plant because you like it. Make sure you know, which most tissue culture cups or bags, they come with the care on them. So it'll tell you if it's easy care. Usually means it's a low light and it's no problem.
Yeah.
To medium, which you might want to do CO2 to make it flourish and be better, or where it's hard, and that's 100%. You're going to have CO2 usually to make it really thrive in the environment.
So in my other advice, besides knowing how to grow plants and knowing how to keep fish, is knowing your water chemistry. Now, I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of us are scared of chemistry because, it's been a while since we took those classes. But knowing your water chemistry is going to set you up for success, whether you use CO2 or you don't. So the lower KH, which is the carbonate hardness that your water is, the more selection of plants that you can grow. That's not to say that you can't grow plants if you have harder water, but your life is going to be a lot easier. I've lived in places with different KHs, and when I had high KH, my life was harder. So that's something if you know that in advance, you can decide if you want to use RO water, or you can decide you want to work with the water you have. You want to choose plants for the water you have. And if you have no GH, which is general hardness in your water, so that would be calcium and magnesium, you're going to know if you should remineralize your water. And that will also, that's part of keeping fish, is keeping your inhabitants happy. So know how to grow plants, know how to keep fish, know what your water chemistry is. You need to get those fundamentals solid, and then you can start the creative process.
Yep. And
Yeah.
even just starting with a basic tank where you've had a fish tank for a while and you want to add some plants in, it'll get you started with just knowing how to grow those plants.
Absolutely.
So, and then
Yeah.
you'll know the ones you do really well with and the ones you don't. And it's a lot to do with substrate. Like that's a big part of any aquascape is the substrate you choose. Now I could do crypts and things like that in sand, but it has no nutritional value for that plant. So like you could do crypts. There's different varieties of crypts like spiralis that are really tall, and you got medium crypts, and you got small crypt compactas, which are small. So you could use that for an entire scape and not ever have to worry about like a specific soil. But if you want to get into the fancier ones, you're going to want a better soil for that, which you could do shrimp soils, which have some good bacteria in it and lowers the pH really well. So we grow moss and really well plants in that. And then you have an in-between substrate, like a planting soil and stuff like that you can use as well.
So my other advice for beginners is to find a community of people who know how to do aquascaping. So if you're lucky enough to have a local club where there are people who aquascape, if you live close to a plant keeping club, there are a few of those in the United States, not where I live. But the other thing is, even if you live in the middle of Nebraska, you can find yourself a really good community here on YouTube. There are a lot of people who have channels who do live streams, and you can ask your questions in those on how to grow plants. And there are a couple of other good resources. George Farmer, who is here at Aquashella today, he has a really wonderful book on how to aquascape. He also has a podcast, and there are a couple of other YouTube channels that are really good for learning how to do that and how to start. But once you have the fundamentals down on how to grow plants, how to keep fish, what your water is, then I think Substrate, like Shelby said, is a next good choice. And I think the easiest thing you can do that's going to set you up for success does cost money. And that's to use a good plant-specific substrate. And I really like aqua soils. So Fluval Stratum is a good product. UNS Contra Soil is one I've used. Tropica makes an aqua soil. And those, they have nutrition for your plant, and they also change your water chemistry. They lower your KH or your pH. they lower both, but specifically your KH is what's important. And they make it easier to grow plants. And that's going to set you up for success also.
Yep. And just enjoy the process. Try it. Don't rush it. It's never good when you try to rush it. Enjoy learning about the hobby and how to do it. So just like you say, you start step by step and you'll get into it. Always take a leap of faith though and start doing it, because a lot of people get nervous that they're not going to be good, and you got to take that first step and maybe make a tank that doesn't look so good.
It's super forgiving. I mean, the worst that's going to happen is you kill a plant, which we've all been there, right? Like I've been growing plants for a lot of years now, and I still kill them, and that's fine. It's not a huge cost commitment to just try it. And, you can always rearrange those to your heart's content until you like it. So Shelby, where is a good place you like to go to find hardscape?
So I usually find them at shows like Aquashella. Number one place. I come home with so much. It's ridiculous. Like the car is just like towed down from the rock and the hardscape. I go to a couple local stores, but not really. Most of it's provided through Carib Sea. They are really good. They have like the most selection and what you want to use for aquascaping most of the time. Dragonstone's really easy to use. Mountain stone as well. So those are two of the biggest rocks you would use in aquascaping.
So ideally you want a rock that doesn't change your water chemistry too much. Now some aquascaping stones will. They will raise your carbonate hardness. So that means they'll leach carbonates into the water, which do make plants more challenging to grow. If you do a lot of water changes, it's going to help. In general, water changes are really good for plant growth.
Always.
And they're good for every fish I've ever kept.
They like clean water.
Absolutely.
You'll keep it algae free.
Absolutely. So, but some hardscape is going to change your water chemistry. So Dragonstone is one that does not. And how you find out if a rock is going to change your water chemistry is you can put a little bit of vinegar on it and hold it up to your ear. And if you hear hissing, that means that the acid and the vinegar is reacting with the calcium or magnesium carbonate in the rock, and it's liberating CO2. So it's bubbling. And that means that your water has less capacity for CO2 in it, and plants need CO2 to grow. So if you inject CO2, you're going to have to inject more CO2. If you don't, the more KH your water has, the less plants you can grow. So that doesn't mean there are some plants that are very tolerant of lots of things, but you just have to consider that in your selection. So rocks, you can find them. I've ordered them online actually. There's a store I like called Aqua Rocks Colorado. I actually went there in person this summer. It was really cool. They were really nice.
Yeah. And
they had it's called Escaping Dojo. So like a dojo, like where you would learn karate. And it was just a box, like a sandbox, It's like and you could pick your rocks out of bins, and you could kind of arrange them and think about what you wanted, and then the owner of it, he put them in a flat rate shipping box and he shipped them off to Indiana for me. So that was really cool. But if you don't have that, you can check out your local fish store and see what they have. Shows are a good place. And if you live in a place with great rocks, you can use those rocks. Yep. If you live in the mountains, you probably have great rocks right there.
Oh, yeah. Just test them, just like she said with the vinegar.
Just test them. So, that's a great way to find hardscape. Most of the rock where I live is limestone based. Yeah. Limestone is not a great choice.
Absolutely not.
Because it's made of calcium carbonate. That's what limestone is.
Yep.
So it's
Unless
not.
You need a hard water tank. You could scape like an African cichlid tank with limestone. They love it.
And that's why African cichlids are so popular in the Midwest, which is where I'm from. So, so that's rocks. Wood, you can find wood, at the same places.
Or reptile shows as well. That is where the creme de la creme of wood is for a cheaper price.
Really?
Yeah.
Did
So
not
yeah,
know that.
they
That's
have
good
a
to
lot
know.
of sandblasted manzanita wood.
Yeah.
So they use those for birds. Usually, like a bird vendor will be having some of those. So
Yeah.
you just want to make sure it's nice and clean when you go to
And,
escape.
and manzanita wood is one of my favorite woods for escaping because it's very, very hard. So the issue with wood is softer woods will degrade over time and they'll leach organics into your water column and you're going to get a lot of algae. And that's not very fun for your life. So I found that spider wood sometimes does that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of spider wood.
Oh, that's my
Personally.
favorite.
I hate it. Maybe I've just gotten some really bad spider wood.
Yeah.
But the softer a wood is, the more it's going to do that.
Yeah.
So
You have Mopani wood. That's pretty cool. It's
That's a
like
nice
big
one.
stumps. They're really neat.
yeah. So if you're lucky to live by a large body of water, you can find driftwood a lot. I know I have friends who live by the Great Lakes, and they get really nice pieces, and that's hardwood forest up there, so it's really hard.
Yep.
It's good stuff. If you live along the ocean, sometimes you can find good driftwood there. So those are options. You could just locally find driftwood and you can make tanks. I usually buy my driftwood. And Aqua Rocks, Colorado is one store I bought it from. If you have a fish store, that's another where you could find nice looking wood to use.
Yeah.
The thing with wood is you need to anchor it. It's going to float up. So your options are either to soak it until it sinks, which could take anywhere from a couple days to, I don't know,
Couple months.
maybe longer. I like to soak things in my pond.
Yeah.
And I just shove them in there and I forget about it. And then when I'm ready to set up the tank, it's already soaked and I don't have to think about it. But if you're in a competition like this, you've got to anchor that wood. And so that means usually gluing it to a rock to keep it to make it sink. And that's a challenge of working with that. So Shelby, should we talk about how we glue things?
Yeah, there's several different ways. The most popular in the hobby, I would say, would be like the cigarette filters and super glue, and then having an activator nearby. It just seems to be really easy. You could use cotton ball instead of cigarette filter. Makes it real simple, but we're a little crazy. We do thermoplastics, which is usually used for casting. So you have to heat it up in a pan, and then it's pliable, just like you would, kind of like a nice glue or like a silly putty.
Yeah.
And then you spread it around the rock and the wood, and you place it together, and then you kind of have to hold it there till it dries. But then when it dries, it is hard as like you ain't getting that apart very easily.
And it's fish safe. That's the important thing. So ordinary super glue, which is it doesn't have to be super glue brand. It just has to say cyanoacrylate, which is the compound that's in super glue. So Gorilla Glue makes it. You can get generic ones. The cool thing is you can buy it in different thicknesses. You can buy really thin kind, or you can buy a thick gel, and I use those differently. So Shelby mentioned cigarette filters. What they are is they're just a tiny little wad of cotton. You can take 2 rocks, or you can take a rock and a piece of wood, and you can jam that little piece of cotton between them, and then you saturate it with the liquidy kind of super glue. And as it sets, you can buy an activator spray to help it set, or you can put water on it that helps it set too, though not quite as quick. But once it forms that bond, it's pretty stable. So that's one thing you could do. You can get creative with epoxies. The man who had the scape next to me yesterday, he used a lot of pond foam to anchor things. That was pretty cool too. So the expandable pond foam, it does.
You got to work fast with that if you use that.
You do.
So that's a little bit more experience because you also have to worry about that expanding too much and cracking your tank. So you got to be very careful. You want to keep it away from the corners of your tank, although it is incredibly awesome.
Can I interrupt real quick? Because we have
Ed.
2 people who have some questions for you.
Fantastic.
Stephen P.
Hi,
asks,
Stephen.
what is the best substrate to use for a fish tank that
Okay.
you're going to escape?
So
And he also says hi.
hi, Stephen.
Hey.
I wish you were here. So I really like UNS Contra soil lately. What do you like, Shelby?
Well, we mainly do like Brightwell or
I've never
a
used that
couple
one.
different ones. Yeah, it's mainly for our shrimp, so we've used
Right.
that. Scaping wise, we could use like Fluval Stratum.
It's
They do
nice.
have the new one that came out.
Yeah, and that one
there's
is a
so
slightly
many.
finer grain. I used that. I hadn't tried that one yet,
Yeah.
but we just used that one this weekend. I liked it. A little bit finer grain than the regular stratum, so it seemed to stay put a little better.
Yeah, but you gotta know
nice.
what your fish want though. So
Right.
if your fish want harder water, obviously you're gonna choose the substrate that goes with that fish, just like she was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So back to basics. So figuring out what that fish needs. So I mean, you have a broad range that you could do. You could just do about any substrate then.
Yeah, I mean, if
but
you're
when they
keeping
thrive-
African cichlids,
Yeah.
they're going to want like aragonite sand, which is
exactly.
going to raise the pH.
Carib Sea has black argonite sand, and it's
do they?
gorgeous.
Oh, nice.
It's my favorite. We have it in our Silhouette tanks because that's also like a brackish kind of tank. So it's really, really nice to scape with too because it's got this beautiful fine sand.
Aw.
There's another question from a big fan named Bex, and she
Aw.
wants
Hi,
to know.
Bex. I miss
Bex.
you. Why
Is-
aren't you here with me? We want you here.
She wants to know: is it all right to glue things directly to the glass? And she says hi also.
I wouldn't do it. No,
You
because
could.
like maintenance, you've got to be able to maintain a scape.
Yep.
So that means you need to be able to clean around it. And there's going to be biofilm growing. There's going to be algae. And if you glue something to it, you can't clean it. And I don't want to do anything that could compromise the structural integrity
Yes.
of it. So I wouldn't glue it to the bottom either. I would always glue it to, you could glue it to tile. Tile is inert. You could use that. You could glue it to rock.
Now, if you're talking about like certain scapes, I have glued wood to the side of the tanks. So that would be in a specific circumstance
For a contest
where
you don't have to keep it. But if
exactly,
if
I
you want it in your
long run.
life and you have to grow it out, like if you're growing it for like even a contest that requires growing it out, you have to be able to maintain it.
Yeah, exactly. So
So-
that algae things can build up real quick in that, especially if it's wood or something like that.
So
You
I
really
wouldn't
don't.
do it. And in general, then, like if you glue it to the bottom of your tank, well, you're stuck with it. What if you don't like it? What if you want a new scape in 2 months? Which, Bex, I know you're gonna want a new scape.
Yeah, no, oh yeah, I would never recommend it to the bottom of the tank. That's for sure. There was a lot of tanks that would have like glued filters, and they just always break. So it's the same. You want to change your scapes. It will happen. You'll get sick of it in a year, and you're like, all right, I want to do something a little bit new.
I don't
Rip it
think
out.
Bex is gonna
do
last
it
the
again.
whole year. She's gonna get sick of it before then.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, thank you. Do we have more questions, Ed? I love questions.
Always.
Yes, there's somebody named Annette, and she was wondering:
Oh,
is
I
it
like
a good
her
idea to
too.
put snails in an aquascape?
Yes.
Always.
I love snails.
And if so, what do you recommend?
So I really love Clethon snails. They're my ride or die snail. So the genus Clethon, they're also called horned neorites. They're the best algae eaters. I never have green spot algae on any of my tanks. I use about 1 per gallon. The ones I have don't seem to leave white eggs everywhere. Other people have reported otherwise, but I think that's because they were sold snails that were not true Clethon snails.
Yeah, not true neorites.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But
Mine too.
I love them. My tanks are so clean. They're nice little snails. I also like ram's horns.
Yes.
I don't mind pond snails. I don't keep mystery snails. I've heard they poop a lot. They're a good wet pet. I don't think they're good for maintaining a scape, but if you love snails, you can keep snails. One thing to consider is if you inject CO2, your pH is going to be lower, your KH is going to be lower, and your snail shells are never going to look as good. It's just a trade-off in life. This is why I've never had mystery snails. I'm sorry, Annette. I know you love them. But I do have other snails. I love snails.
Yeah, and it would be more maintenance if you were to do certain ones in escape. But ram's horn snails seem to do really well. Pink ram horns, they're easy.
They're
And pond
pretty.
snails, I mean, most likely you're not going to be able to avoid them very often. So
I
you're gonna
just
get
embrace
somehow.
them.
But my favorite snail of all time is going to be rabbit snail, but not good for aquascaping. So
So I've never had a rabbit snail. Have you?
Yeah.
Did they?
Oh, yeah.
Did they munch up your plants or?
so they would. They would.
didn't know
Usually
that.
you want them in harder water, so it's also hard to have
Yeah.
a plant that would grow in harder water. So
Yeah.
not a good choice, but wonderful.
Cool snail, yeah. But you could maybe make an interesting rock work tank with that or something if that's what you wanted to keep.
Yeah.
So we're pro snail here. Pro snail.
Don't worry, we love snails.
Okay, Zen Ginger has a question.
Hi,
She-
Zenny.
She
Hi,
likes to
Zenny.
hang out at gardening centers, and she likes to look at
Yeah.
all those rocks, but she wants to know if they're safe to put in her tank.
For sure, they probably are. If
Most
they look like limestone, they're gonna raise your KH or pH. Here's a secret, though. When I lived in Iowa, I had a KH and GH of 22, anyways. So I went ahead and used the limestone because what was it going to get harder? It
Right.
couldn't get any harder. So if your water's already super hard, who cares? Just use what rocks you want. But
Exactly.
other rocks are a lot of them are okay. There's some river rock that's really pretty.
Yeah. Be careful with some river rock though. It does still have some metals in it, but like you'll clearly be able to tell that they're kind of like sparkly. So kind of stay away from those.
Well, even though some of those are more quartz based, they're okay.
Yep.
I
Just
think
test
that
it with the vinegar and you should be all right.
I bought rocks before from a local landscaping company. It was 17 cents a pound. And it was so funny. They had me drive my truck onto a scale at the beginning. And then I went and picked up, I don't know, enough rocks to maybe cover this. And then I drove back onto the scale at the end of it, and it was like $12 or something.
Wow.
It was so
So,
cheap. And they were
Great place to start
Nice
if you
rocks.
want to find rocks.
and they were nice. I'm happy with those rocks. They really suited the tank.
Yeah.
So garden centers are a great place to look, and you'll have different stuff depending on where in the country you are. Home Depot is also sometimes a good place to look. There was a time, I think it was maybe last year or the year before, Home Depot had this crazy special on, well, it was called something different, but it was Dragonstone
Yep.
and Sirius stone.
online.
And it was like
It was online.
$1 a pound. And so people were buying like hundreds of pounds of it
Yep.
for
it
like
comes
no
once
money.
in a blue moon and it'll be
So-
online.
So
So if you luck out, you're lucky.
look for it.
Yeah.
And you might be able to find it. Because here's the thing: Dragonstone, Mountain Stone, Sirius stone, those are like made up marketing terms. Those are not, I'm not a geologist, but those are not geological terms.
Yeah.
They're made up. And I don't even know if Dragonstone is a real product, to tell you the truth. It might be just like a clay. It might be. It's,
I know it breaks apart so easily. You never know.
yeah, and it's filthy. So, Ed, do we have more questions?
Yes. Mike from All Things Fish. He's a
Hi,
huge
Mike.
fan.
Why aren't you here, Mike? Why aren't you here with me?
Well, if he was here, then he wouldn't be able to ask this question.
Well, this is true, Ed.
He has a lot of beautiful scape tanks, but he's finding it overwhelming. Is there a point
Yeah.
when you can have too many scaped tanks?
Absolutely.
Shelby,
not.
are you overwhelmed?
Never.
No, she's not overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed. My threshold for whelming, I'm always at least whelmed. I do get into overwhelmed. You know, life is about trade-offs. I feel like you can only have so many high-tech CO2 tanks because we all have
Yeah.
only so many hours in a day. So the aquascaper Josh Sims, he's very famous. I remember in a talk, he said, someone asked him how many tanks he had. His 6 tanks. 2 of them are his champion aquascape tanks that he's working on at different stages. And he has 4 farms where he farms plants. So he always has good looking plants. And that makes sense too, because quality matters.
Mhm.
And that's what he has. And I get that. I have 3 tanks. And I feel good about that.
Yeah. So when you get into the higher CO2 and more intricate detail to the tanks, you could get overwhelmed very easily.
Yeah.
I don't even have a CO2 tank because
Right.
of that. We will be setting one up to do some, but I have the luxury of living in Florida. So we have the beautiful sun to do the work for us and outside. So we get to grow our plants outside at very
Oh, that's
easy.
nice.
So
I live in
it sucks.
Indiana.
Yeah, it's a
I
difference.
don't have that.
Summer pond, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
But I would say if you are getting overwhelmed, I would try to narrow it down to you can find color and beauty in plants that don't need all the CO2 and the fancy lights.
Yeah.
I have purple crypts. I've got red crypts that stay pretty deep red under the leaves. You just got to find that plant in a different style. And if you want those colors and things like that, there's so many plants out there that people don't realize are a lot easier to maintain. I grow all mine in LEDs and no CO2. So I have tons of crypts, obviously. Boost is one of the ones that are very beautiful. You'll get your purples, your pinks, and you don't need CO2 for boost. They actually like and thrive in low light and no maintenance, really.
And my suggestion for if you're feeling overwhelmed is go for quality over quantity.
Yep.
I don't have many tanks. I don't want a ton of tanks, but I can really put a lot of love into the tanks I have. I can invest in better equipment. I think that makes a difference.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because, I don't have a cheap regulator, and that way it stays rock steady. I have good lights because I know I can rely on them. I have a good filter, but I don't have a ton of tanks, so I'm not spread so thin cost-wise,
Exactly.
time-wise. And I think that, it's kind of maybe an American tendency to want more. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe think, how can you put more love into what you have and to have less of it?
One
and
bigger tank.
Yeah. And my other thing is bigger tanks are easier than smaller tanks. I would much rather have one big tank than 4 small tanks. Now, I know that Shelby is a shrimp girl, so maybe
we have to.
Yeah. Well, and she sells them too. But for me, I would rather have one big tank. My dream someday is maybe to just have one tank.
Yeah, so I have
one.
multiple tanks, but they mainly have moss in them. We don't do. I do some of them with crypts and stuff, but we do have our nice aquascapes where we've set up and we keep them running. But we do tear those down and then we reset it. So that's a lot of things where people kind of they get bored or gets overwhelmed because they're taking care of something too much. And that's when you kind of need to scrap it. There's probably something going on. One's pulling nutrients from the other. You're getting hair algae outbreaks and things like that. It might just be okay to start over. And then you get that feeling of like, wow, this is really beautiful. I did something beautiful again and enjoy it.
Yeah, so that's the other thing too. If your tank's not working, change it up.
Oink Master has a question.
Hi, Oinky.
She just moved 6 of her American flagfish into a new tank that was filled with Japanese pennywort, and they devoured it all.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
What plant can she, or would you guys recommend her use that will be fine with the?
I mean, I've never
flagfish?
kept that fish, but probably nothing that's tender. If they're munching on that, try
Anubias.
crunchier plants. Java ferns, Anubias, spruce. My favorite plant is Crinum calamistratum. That's my favorite plant.
The
And it's-
onion plant.
No, well, it's related
Curly
to onion. That's Crinum thallium.
Okay.
This one has like really hard, like those leaves are crunchy.
Oh yeah.
They're sturdy. Nothing's gonna eat those leaves up. It's super slow growing, but I love it. So just look for sturdier leaves. I've never kept that fish though.
Swords are really good as
Well,
well. They're a
yeah.
little bigger.
I mean, some swords,
are thin.
some fish like to munch like plecos. They like to rasp at swords. So swords aren't always the answer, but for those flagfish, maybe it would be.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with Anubias though. In general, this is a great plant. I love
yes.
Anubias in all ways. I love it for aquascaping, and I love it in general.
Mystery Snail Gardens, who made the lanyard I'm currently wearing,
She made mine too.
she has a big question for
She
you
put
guys.
my kitty on it. This is Fat Kitty.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, she has a question. What are the things that you need to know before getting into mermaid weed?
Oh, don't do it. I would say it's one of those-
Proserpinaca
yeah.
palustris is the scientific name. You don't need to know that, but that's what it is.
I would suggest highlight and CO2. Absolutely. Mermaid weed is grown out like naturally in Florida. We have it all over the place.
Yeah.
It needs that highlight to thrive. Now, you could keep it alive for some time, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I would stray away from it. It's like the purple waffle of the plant community to us.
Well, Annette
have it,
has,
but-
I think, low KH water, but then she raises her KH because of her snails. So it may not thrive.
Yeah.
You could try it anyways, though. It's a stem. It's a
Yeah.
low commitment thing to try. I don't know if it will do too much without CO2 if you're raising your KH and your KH too high.
Yeah.
You're going to need to fertilize it a little bit. You're not running a high-tech tank. I would try a fertilizer, one of the all-in-one ones, like Easy Green or Nylac G makes an all-in-one fertilizer. I would try it at like
Be
maybe,
careful to not use the copper version. He has a non-copper version of that.
Oh, for the Nylac
Yes.
G.
Yeah. So copper is really bad for anything like
Yeah.
snails and shrimp. So
Easy
there is non-copper.
Easy Green is fish and shrimp safe. I would do 1 pump per gallon per week to start of that to see how it goes. I would use a substrate that had some nutrition in it if you were using Fluval stratum or something else, or I would at least put some root tabs under there to see what it did. But it is going to need some nutrients. It's going to need some decent light. I don't know how well it'll grow for you or not. If you give it the right conditions, though, it will grow so fast that you hate it. I would not grow that plant.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that much trimming in my life.
I've never had it like successfully transfer from any pet store to maybe if you got it for someone that was actually growing it, it would be a little bit easier.
I think she's getting it as someone grew it.
okay. Then it would do better.
I
But
think
yeah,
Steven's giving her
a
some.
nice light and good substrate, you'll be good then. You don't necessarily need CO2. You would. with
It'll grow
KH,
pretty
yeah.
slow then, which
Yeah.
will be okay. Like don't put it in your goldfish tank. Don't do that because she's
And
goldfish.
yeah, be careful with the mystery snails.
Oh, you think they might?
Yes, they usually.
Yeah.
It's not like they intentionally try to eat your
But they
plant.
kind of
but if
trash
it-
it.
Yeah, so if they're dying or at all, they're just heavy,
They
and
are
that's a
heavy.
very light,
It's tender.
stemmy plant.
It's
So
tender. Yeah.
maybe put a rock and then the plant on top. Maybe they'll stay away. They'll probably still go there.
Maybe put it in one of. Do you have any tanks that aren't mystery snail or goldfish? I don't think you do. You know what? Just try it. Here's the thing: the worst thing you can do is kill a plant, and everyone will forgive you.
Yep.
This is from Dee Dee's
Hey,
Fin
Dee Dee.
Den.
Hi, Dee Dee.
She says hi back, and she was impatient and didn't soak her wood.
It's okay.
It sank, but she has so many tannins. How does she get the tannins out of her water? It seems like
Purigen.
doesn't stop.
Seachem
Yeah.
Purigen.
Water change and then purging. Yeah.
Seachem Purigen in your filter. That stuff works. You have to recharge it with bleach, and you can only recharge it so many times. But that stuff works.
Rinse it first.
Awesome. And then this is from Bex. She has a question. Okay, she just got some Rotella Wallachuk chili.
Willicky eye.
Oh, gosh. Hey, I kind of came close. Not really, but
you did.
you figured out what I was saying.
You
That's
did
what's
good.
important.
You
Yes.
did good, Ed. You did
Good.
good.
She
Better
said,
than most.
"What's? Oh, wow, better than most. That's very high for me." Okay, what is the best care tips?
If you've got the right conditions, which would be low KH, very low KH. I can't grow it. My KH isn't low enough. Decent light, some CO2. You'll hate it because it'll grow so fast.
Yep.
It needs some fertilization from the water column. It grows
Good
any other
substrate
rotap.
usually gives it enough, but
Yeah,
it's a very
It's a
beautiful tank.
it's a
Beautiful.
weed.
It's
Yeah,
one of
it's
my
a.
favorite though.
It is. I can't. My water's too hard. I can't grow it, and I don't do RO water.
Yeah,
but
that's
it's
what
a-
we do.
If
so.
your KH is low enough, it'll grow like a weed. You don't need to do anything special for it if you have the right KH, which Bex does. So
Nice.
you can probably grow it just fine.
Okay, this is the last
Trim it
question,
lots.
and then we'll let you get back to the convention, guys.
All right,
All right.
thanks,
This is
Ed.
from Fishymon.
Hi, Fishymon.
He has,
Fishymon has the best low tech tanks I've ever seen. You would think he uses CO2. His tanks are awesome. Love Fishymon's tanks.
all but one of his tanks are awesome. The one that has his giant Oscar keeps pulling everything up.
Get
What?
rid of your Oscar.
Oh, that's probably not what he wanted to hear. How would you guys scape a tank around an Oscar?
Use cool rocks.
Only rocks.
Use cool rocks.
You could try potentially some Anubis, but usually the fish that are that big and cichlids have a extreme personality. So we have a peacock, and it does that. It decides to take a mouthful of. I scaped it with giant river stones and then little ones. It can't move the river stones, so I have like a giant piece of wood and then river stones to keep it in place. But as far as plants, most likely they're going to munch or move them. The one thing you could do, though, that is most people don't think about. So they don't actually eat the plants. They just usually move them or thrash them too much. So you could take the plant, take the piece of wood, grow it in a separate tank with like Java ferns, like narrow leaf. You got needle leaf. You got all these Java ferns, and they root to the wood really well. And then place it into a tank. And that was like the most successful I've ever had, like a planted actual cichlid tank.
So one other thing that you could try, and I'm not saying it's going to work, but when I lived in Iowa, I had a friend who had Mumbuna cichlids, which usually you would think are plant chompers, but he grew hygrophila, sunset hygrophila, which is the world's fastest growing plant. It's illegal in a lot of states because it's very invasive. You can't buy it in Florida where Shelby lives because it's horribly invasive. I think it grows faster than Pogosum and Salatus octopus. And that stuff grew so fast that even though the cichlids would, nip at it and pull at it and munch it, it didn't matter. There would be enough of it there. And it also would grow just floating kind of and semi-attached. And it was pretty. It had like really pink leaves and pink at the tips. So that's something you could try. Steven's growing some of it right now. You could maybe have him send you a bit of it. It is really pretty. So it's worth a shot, but I think that honestly you should focus on rock work, or you should get rid of your Oscar.
No, I love Oscars.
Life is about choices. You can't do everything. You can't keep every fish. Life is about choices.
Okay, we've got one last one. I'm so sorry, guys.
It's okay.
But this is Scotty Aquatic.
Hi, Scotty.
Oh my gosh. He's tired of all of his friends giving him the business about not having pretty planted tanks.
It's okay.
What should he do to just make his tanks pop the easiest possible way?
Crypts.
Always.
Crypts. I love crypts.
Yeah, it's really hard to kill them, honestly. Unless
They're
you have
so
like
pretty.
really, really hard water, then you really can't keep anything.
They're so pretty. Just get yourself a semi-okay substrate. Put some root tabs in there if you don't have like an aqua soil, and grow some crypts. You don't need a ton of light. You don't need CO2. They're such great plants.
Yep.
I mean, if you want an Oscar, okay, they're going to kill your crypts. But if you have community fish, grow some crypts. You'll love them. They look great.
Oh, yeah. Or Java ferns.
Yeah.
Well, you guys were amazing. Both of their scapes were amazing. You guys,
thank
there's
you,
going to be
guys.
lots of videos out there of both of them and all the scapes over there. I mean,
Thank you.
I don't know how anybody could even judge
You know what,
it.
Shelby? I'm super proud of us both. We both
Yes.
did good scapes.
You did wonderful.
We
High
did
five.
good. High five,
So awesome.
girlfriend.
We did it.
Yeah, we did. And I'm tired.
Just don't be scared.
Did you
Just
guys
start doing
both
it.
use rummy nose?
So I have
I
rummy
do.
nose raspboras, and those,
those
are
are
from Jason from
yeah,
Hot Time
those are
Aquatics.
nice.
Joanne from
It was like
Tape.
a orange nosed raspberry.
Yeah.
Or,
So pretty.
So it's a raspbora instead of a tetra.
Are those
Oh.
Sabwa splendens? Is that the scientific?
I don't know the
I think
scientific.
it
This is literally my first time owning them. I've never seen them
Pretty.
before, and he had them, and I was like, all right, we gotta have
Borrow
those.
your fish.
Yeah.
We got rummy nose tetras from Eric Wyrock,
Oh, neat.
and they're
Oh.
the fattest rummy nose anyone has ever
Yep.
seen.
I was
and the-
impressed with
huge.
The
both.
cool thing is, so they started in Michigan. They're taking a detour in Chicago, and then they're going to live with Drew Fishy Biz in St. Louis. So
What?
they're going to be well dressed.
Wow.
So yeah, because it
Nice.
was Biz's birthday. So
Oh, very cool.
Eric gave him the fish.
Well, where can we see you guys? And at what time during the week?
Well, I'm on every Monday, 5:00 Eastern time. I stream with Stephen P 2003 Aquatics. We have a live stream called Wet Your Plants, where we talk about how to grow plants.
Yep.
And we talk about aquascaping. we love beginner questions. So check us out. I'm on Instagram. I'm Kelly KELLEY.petlab, and I post pictures there. But I don't make a YouTube channel because it's just go on other people's. I don't do my own.
Makes it easier that way.
Yeah, but Shelby,
Yep.
she's
So we stream every Monday. We're the Garden of Eder, EDER, and that's 9:00 Eastern time. I always forget the time zones. But we mainly do shrimp, and then we talk about plants. If you ever have any questions, we do aquascaping as well. So we're always down to answer those questions. We do have other live streams that will come back in the future, but for now, just Mondays.
And you can buy shrimp from Shelby. She has awesome shrimp, so you can buy her shrimp. You can order them online. She will send you shrimp.
Yeah, TGOEshrimp.com.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And guys, I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here at Aquashella. And we will be doing a couple more shows before the end of the night. So stay tuned, folks.
Well, thank you, Ed.
Bye, everyone.